Welcome back, everybody. Finally, we're at the last part of this small mini series that's ISO, aperture and shutter speed. And today we're doing ISO. ISO is going to be much shorter than the other ones because it's not really a lot to explain. Please, before we get started, I'm going to beg you again, got to do me old beggy. Can we please like, share and subscribe to get this channel really going, get it out to other people, friends you know and things like that. Share it to whoever you want. Shutter speed and aperture, like I've said before, are equal to ISO, all three of them. We're going to use them in a triangle. The difference with ISO in this conversation is ISO is not a physical light source, whereas shutter speed, you keep it open, you get more light in. The quicker it goes, the less light in. Aperture, you open the lens to let more light in and you close it to let less light in. ISO is different because all ISO is an amplifier of whatever brightness you've got. So when we look at ISO, we're not looking at it as a physical component, but like I said, it is equally as important. All it does is gets you to the right level of brightness that you need. ISO is like a guitar amplifier, or I'll tell you what, a loudspeaker. If you've got it on a low level, the music comes out nice and crisply. The same as like in your car, any kind of speaker at all. If you want it to be really loud, you have to amplify the signal that goes through it. Whilst amplifying it, the higher you put it, you get to a point where the level will start breaking up at some point. You know what a speaker's like. You pump up a speaker, you'll start losing bass. Even higher, you'll start losing treble. You can hear the difference in sound. ISO is just amplifying the signal that goes to your sensor. Or with SLRs and old film photography, this would have been, you would have bought your film with the ISO already built in. I'm not exactly sure how it worked back then because I never really used film, but I think it was thicker. The light would go through it less. And then if you wanted better ISO film, then you'd buy just a different I don't want to say the wrong thing because I might be slightly wrong on that, but we're using digital cameras now. But basically ISO was set then and they've just carried it forward. They've used the same word. It is a signal that gets amplified through your sensor. So basically most cameras will start at a base ISO of 100. Don't forget when I'm saying this, we are doing insect in flight, fast shutter speed, small aperture photography. So we know we're going to need to put our ISO up. Anyone that knows anything about photography will know if you're shooting fast shutter speeds and you're shooting small apertures, the only thing you can then do is turn up the ISO. So we need to be working at higher ISOs. One of the things that I've learned through photography is don't listen to everybody, even me. When I started photography, ISO 100 was the holy grail. They always said, try and get your photograph to ISO 100. Yes, that's all well and good, so you get a very, very detailed, crisp picture. But don't forget, we need to crank it up. There is no way we can keep the ISO at ISO 100. We would just be having a very, very dark image. The higher we crank our ISO up is the more digital noise we get. You can see this in the background of pictures sometimes, but nowadays we have a lot of noise reduction software that we can do post-production. So we can take our photos that we've got and we can reduce the noise in the background and in the image itself. But we want to try and keep that to a minimum. We don't want to just be saying, oh, well, we can get that as bright as possible and we'll sort it out later. We want to find out the best ISO that we can with the camera that we're using. I found that the Nikons and the Canon cameras I've used are roughly round about 3200 ISO up to a maximum for me for insects in flight of around about 8000 ISO. What you need to do is get your picture as detailed as possible before you go into post-editing. Once you go into post-editing, you can sort out things like noise in the background. But if you've got a blurry picture in the first place, or if your shutter speed wasn't fast enough, or if it's out of focus because the aperture wasn't small enough, then you're not gonna have a photo anyway. So the very, very first thing you need to do is get your photo, and you need to get your photo at a bright level so that when you go to post-production, it's easier to sort out. I will be going through editing later on. So yes, of course, I would love to get my pictures at ISO 100, where they are the most detailed and have the least digital noise, but I have to raise it. The least I can probably go down to when I shoot in broad daylight is roughly around about 800 ISO, if I'm lucky, but I would say more than that, 1600, 32 and beyond. ISO starts, like I said, at 100 and then goes 200, 400, 800, 1600, 32, 64, and so on. One stop for every one of those that you're going up. The same as when you do your shutter speed, the same as when you do your aperture. You have to work that balance out in the exposure triangle, but I'll talk about this later. Like I said, this was going to be a short one. There's not actually much to discuss. It's just that you need to understand what ISO is. It is not light, it is a signal. Remember that. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one, which will be exposure triangle. Thanks, guys.